Hello people, welcome to my channel. My name is Hilary and today I will be talking about my Reddit SFF readathon TBR. So I got this idea from Covers by Cassidy. I will link her video somewhere, and I got really interested, so I checked out the Reddit's yearly science fiction fantasy readathon. So the idea behind that is that you have a lot of prompts to go through for you to read within a year. So it starts in April and it ends in March 2023. There are, however, a couple of rules. So you have several prompts that you have to fulfill throughout the year. One book can be used only for one prompt, so you can't use one book for several prompts. There is no repeat authors, and the exception is when you're reading an anthology, then you can have the repeated author there. And there is allowed one reread, so most of them should be new to you. Also, there is an additional rule that you can change one of the prompts if you really want with the previous year's prompts. And I am thinking about that for the buddy read prompt, but I'll get to that more in details when I get to that. Additionally, there's also the regular mode and a hard mode. So each of the prompt has an extra prompt or a sub prompt for that reading prompt, so many words prompts, and you can do it the easy way, you can do it the hard mode, you can mix it up, you can do whatever you want. And for me personally, I picked the hard version for each of them. So I will be telling you what the prompt is, what the hard mode prompt is. I'm going to combine them and then tell you what book I picked out. As of right now, I have picked out or written down one book per prompt, but I do have for myself a list of different books, so I might freely change the books out, but I made a list that I would have no rereads, no repeat authors, and books I am somewhat interested. However, a lot of the books are unknown to me, and I won't be going into much details for any of the books because the list is quite long. There is also an additional hero mode where you can fulfill it by giving a review for each of the books, and it doesn't have to be a long review or a Reddit review or a YouTube review. It doesn't matter as long as you review it as I understood it. I also made a list with lots of books that I have found. For this I used the Reddit has another subreddit where there is a lot of recommendations for books, especially for a little bit harder prompts. And so I compiled from there some of interesting books, at least for me, and also have watched a couple of the TBR videos and picked a couple of book recommendations, especially for the harder prompts from there also. So I will be sharing it with you, and if you want you can add more books there, and maybe some people or even me can find something interesting to read from there. So we'll be going for the first prompt, and I don't have most of these books in physical form because I do prefer to read my books in ebook formats, and if I really enjoy it and like it, then I will buy it physically. The first prompt is to read an LGBTQ plus list book, and they have their own list of books. And the hard mode is you have to pick a book with less or equal to 10 votes. There were several interesting books that I am interested in there, but for this I did pick The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, and I will be getting that book from the book Broken Binding subscription, so I will be hopefully reading it this year anyways. The second prompt is Weird Ecology, and that means that the world is somewhat different to ours. And the hard mode is no Jeff Vandermeer or Shaina Mieville. I'm not sure if that is correct pronunciation, and for that I did actually think about Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, but instead I picked Dune because I have watched the movie, I have read the first graphic novel, so I think I'm quite good to go for the trilogy of Dune, and they do have a lot different with the world, with the sandworms and the spices and everything else. So I think that should fit quite well. For the third, I think it was one of the hardest prompts to fill. The prompt itself is 2 or more authors, and for the hard mode it is 3 or more authors. And I didn't want anthologies if possible. I wanted a standalone book with 3 or more authors, and it was surprisingly hard to find. And for that I have picked The Understudy by Sophie Hannah, Claire McIntosh, B.A. Paris, and Holly Brown. And I'm pretty sure I got recommended by somebody's video, so I'll put it somewhere here down. Next we have a historical science fiction fantasy, and the SFF, the hard mode, is not taking place in Britain or Ireland, and for that I picked The Clockwork Girl by Mazzola. And honestly, this was absolute cover buy for me. And look at the sprayed edges, and this is based on true events that happened in the 1700s in Paris, where a lot of children disappeared. And honestly, I bought this book without 100% having read the synopsis, and after reading it and getting to know that it is actually based on true events, I'm really excited to read this. So for the next prompt, we have set in space, and at least 50% of the book has to be taking place in space, and the sub-prompt is characters not originally from Earth. And I did get help with that again, and I picked The Unkindness of Goose by Rivers Solomon. And this book actually fitted a lot of prompts, but I picked it for here. I do hope the character is not from Earth, but I think I got it confirmed somewhere. And we have the main character who is basically ferrying people around in space, and that's as far as I know, and honestly I don't want to get more into it. I don't know if you can hear all the burring, but my co-host is here again, Minion, so you might see him also. So for the next, I think it was one of the easiest prompts, and that is standalone, and it has to be a full standalone with no connected short stories or novellas, and it shouldn't be in some sort of a list that they provided. And I think the list was quite short, so basically most of the standalone books work for this. And for this I picked The Once and Future Witches by Alexey Harrow. So I did read the Splinter by Alexey Harrow, and I didn't enjoy it, but I know she is a love author, so I will try this book out. That The Once and Future Witches has been on my TBR for quite long, so we'll see how much I enjoy it. For the next prompt, it was anti-hero, and for the hard mode we had to read a young adult book, and for that I picked right now Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. So I have read the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I do want to continue this, so it is YA definitely, and I hope the anti-hero will be right for this, at least I hope. And if nothing else, I read Malice by Heather Walters, should fit that category, and also I have The Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao, and so something should at least fit in that category. So for the next, we have book club or read along, and it should be a Reddit one, and the hard mode should be a current club or a read along, and you have to participate in discussion. So this is the most hardest one. I know a lot of people, since I think most of us aren't submitting these to the Reddit community, that they are just using booktube read-alongs or book clubs, and most of them have. Honestly, I haven't participated in any of them, I think, and because usually, I don't know, they pick the books I'm not very much interested, or I have already read, so maybe I'll try to do something, or maybe I'm gonna change it for a buddy read or something. We'll see how the year goes, and maybe I do find an interesting read-along or a book club to participate in. So we'll see what happens with that prompt. So for the next, we have a cool weapon, and that means the weapon has to have some magical properties. and the sub-prompt is weapon has to have a unique name. For example, Sting from The Hobbit would go very well. However, I've read it already. I could use it as my one reread, but The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons was recommended, and I'm pretty sure it's high epic fantasy. And apparently I might start another one. The next prompt we have is Rebellions and Revolutions, and the sub-prompt is it has to have the main theme of the book. So I thought about the Aurelian Cycle, I think it's called, by Rosaria Munda. That is quite well, but since I do have the Jasmine Throne by Dasha Suri on my shelves anyways, and they say rebellion should be the main plot or revolution, so I think I'm gonna pick this one. So for the next prompt we have the name in the title, and it means the first name, and for the hard mode it has to be a full name. For example, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And for this I know a lot of people picked the book The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, but honestly I do want to read that book, but I have too many trilogies in this list anyways, so I picked The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova, and I know I am butchering that name. It's kind of hard to pronounce it for me. My tongue gets stumbled up. And I don't know again a lot about this, but it has been enjoyed quite a lot in the booktube, so I'm interested to get into that book. So for the next prompt we have author who uses initials, and the initials should be pseudonyms, for example like T. Kingfisher. And for that I have picked The Leviathan Weeks by S.A. Corey. That is two persons who are writing it, and it's the Expanse series, and it has been on my list anyways. I don't plan to watch the TV series, at least for now, maybe in the future. My husband has read it, enjoyed it, and I'll try to get to start that series. Again, it's a huge series, so I'm not enjoying that part, but I am still interested in that. For the next book, it should be published in this year, 2022, and it should be a debut. So for this I picked Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and I think I should be getting that in the near future. For the next prompt we have urban fantasy, and that means that there should be supernatural elements that are taking place in the 19th to the 21st century society. And for the hard mode we have LGBTQ plus point of view character, and for that people recommended Jade City by Von der Lee. I did want to read this last year, however the book I ordered got delayed and delayed, and then I didn't manage to fit it into any of my TBRs. I'm sorry if it's shining, so hopefully I get to read this trilogy in this year or the beginning of next year. So I think the next prompt is another one of the hardest ones, and the prompt is the book takes place in Africa, or is inspired by Africa, and the hard mode is that author is African. And I know most people have a lot of problems finding a book to fit that. So there is the Rage of the Dragons by Evan Winters, who has grew up in Africa, but I am getting the book Blood Zion by Deborah Falaye, and I discovered that this is about Nigerian mythology based on, and the author also has lived in Nigeria, so I am so happy that I can fit that book on this list and that it fits perfectly. So for the next prompt I did get a little bit help from the TBR videos. So it has the non-human protagonist, that means no humans, no partially humans, but humanoid aliens count. And the sub-prompt is no elves, no angels, no dwarves, no hobbits, no humanoid aliens. So it has to be fully not human, no robots, nothing. And for that I did get that recommendation of two books, and I picked The Builders by Daniel Polanski, and that should be a dark fantasy with some animal characters. I think also maybe The Animal Farm by George Orwell would count also because the main characters aren't humanoids. Also, I got recommendation of Stuff and Nonsense, but by Andrew Sable, and that should also be, I think, about bear character or something like that, so fully animal main characters. Another one is a tongue twister and also a little bit complicated prompt, and it is wibbly wobbly timely wimely, and that means that the time should not behave as it does normally. So time travel, time slips, time loops, multiple timelines all count, but for the hard mode, time travel doesn't count. That means the time has to change, have to go differently. For example, Narnia is a really good example where the time moves differently in Narnia than in the regular world, but it's not time travel. And for that, I put down The Space Between the Worlds by Makaya Johnson. Yes, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was quite popular in, I think, last year or so in the booktube. And was it about where in each of the different multiverse you had your copies and you could only travel to where you had been died, I think. So I was editing the video and I discovered that I have missed 2 of the prompts. So for the next prompt we have 5 science fiction fantasy short stories, and for the hard mode we have read an entire anthology or collection. And for that, so I took that collection or anthology should have more than 5 short stories, and I picked the stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang, and it was recommended in somebody's TBR videos comments, and I picked that one. For the next prompt we have mental health, and the hard mode is no Stormlight Archive or any book from the list, and the list was very short, so I picked a booktube favorite book called Pet. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure the book is for me, so I'm not very excited to read it, but I am willing to try. Next we have indie published or self-published book, and it has to have fewer than 100 reviews on Goodreads, or it has to be published by their provided list. And honestly, it was quite hard to find one. I didn't have any books that had fewer than 100 reviews on my TBR already, so I did find a book, The Stolen 2 Short Stories by Michelle Brown, and it has 82 reviews by the 24th of April date, and it's actually a second book on that short story collection series. The first one had over 100 reviews, but since they are not connected, I'm gonna go in and read the second book. And Goodreads says, what crimes are committed in the name of peace, control and harmony? In a world where public violence is a distant memory and peer pressure is a mandated punishment, Clarice and Sarah are about to find out, and honestly, it sounded quite interesting. But however, if that book, I should read that quite fast until it still has under 100 reviews. There is another book that is very new. It was published in the 21st of April this year, and Ashley from Frolics Through Friction recommended it, and it is A Daughter of the Trolls by Mackenzie Catron, and it has 24 reviews, and this should be about a girl who is in a wheelchair and I think is afraid of going outside, but since something happens to her mother, she needs to go and be brave and trying to get through in the world with a wheelchair. That is quite hard. So also that sounds really interesting, and I'm actually maybe reading both of them. We'll see. For the next we have award finalist but no wins, and it has to be neither Hugo nor Nebula, and for that I don't know if I cheated. I picked the Goodreads nominee but no winner, Burning God by R.F. Kuang. Since I don't need to read this anyways, this is the 3rd book in the Poppy War trilogy that is quite really dark, high epic fantasy inspired by the Asian history, and honestly I'm really happy to get to this next month. So we don't have actually a lot more prompts, but for next we have BIPOC author, that means Black, Indigenous, or person of color, Armenian. And for the hard mode, it has to be Indigenous author. And for that, I picked Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And this author has been recommended for a lot of prompts, and I picked him for this one just to keep him in. Another one that fits quite well and I am interested in, is quite popular in the booktube right now, is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. For the next one, we have shape shifters, and at least one character can change shape. That is quite easy to fulfill, but the hard mode is no wolf dog shifter. So my first idea was to pick the next Changeling Psi book by Nalini Sai that is coming out this year. However, the synopsis of the book didn't give me exact who is the character. There is wolf shifters in that world, but I'm taking as a main character, and it looked like maybe one is a Sai, that is basically human with superpowers, and maybe a leopard shifter, but I wasn't 100% sure. And I did read Shadowed Lies by Clara Hartley in April, and I'm counting that. So we have dragon shifters, and I'm just taking it. So at least I have one book read from this TBR. And that is the second book in the trilogy. I read the first book way before 2019, and I'm just trying to finish it up. And hopefully I can manage to finish the series reading the third book in May. We're almost to the end, so for the next prompt, we have no ifs, ands, or buts, and that means the, a, and, or, if, of, but. And it has to have a title of more than 3 words or equal to 3 words. And for that, I picked Never Have I Ever by Isabel Yap, that I'm not even certain that it's out right now, but should be coming out this year. I lied, it came out last year, and it should be a collection of short stories. So we're trying that out, and I actually did want to read a little bit more short story collections, not just my Brother Grimm's fairy tales that is still looking at me since I've been reading it, I think soon to be a year, and I haven't touched that book in like 6 months at least. And for the last prompt, we have Family Matters, that means featuring biological family ties, sisters, brothers, mothers, fathers, children. And for the hard mode, we have to have at least 3 generations, one from one family. I think this might somewhat count, but I'm not 100% sure. These Violent Lights, I think, might also, but again, I'm not sure. I haven't read about it, but they gave that feeling, although I'm not sure if they're featuring 3 generations. So my video got me off, and what I wanted to say was that the book I picked was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Morena Garcia, and again, it's one of the booktube favorites. At least a lot of people were really excited to read it. However, I don't think I have heard that many people reading it, so it will be quite interesting to get into that book. But this is about it for now, so you can tell me in the comments down below, are you participating also in this? Are you enjoying it? And also maybe you have really good ideas about the books that me or somebody else can read. You can drop those down in the comments or use the link and add it in the Excel sheet, and also add your name if you want, so we know who to attribute the good book recommendations. But I think that's about it. This video is way too long already, so I do hope you enjoyed this TBR. I'll be back in a year to give you an overview of how did I do and what books I actually picked. And that's it, so thank you for watching and bye!